The crystal wine glasses clinked together in a toast. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, raised hers, her eyes glittering with that familiar, condescending light. "To my brilliant son, Mark, the new vice president of sales," she announced to the family gathered around their polished mahogany dining table. The room filled with applause. She then turned her gaze to me, her smile tightening just a fraction. "And to his supportive wife, Anna?" The pause before my name was a calculated insult, designed to hang in the air. "It's just so wonderful you have someone to keep the house warm for you while you're out conquering the world, darling." My sister-in-law, Clara, the family's golden child, snickered into her napkin. "Someone has to do the laundry and plan the dinner parties, Mom," she added, her voice syrupy sweet. "Anna has a real talent for domestic things. We should all be so lucky to have such a simple, stress-free life." The table erupted in a wave of polite, cruel laughter. It was a routine I knew well. For 10 years, this had been my role. The simple, unambitious housewife. A quaint accessory to their son's soaring success. Mark just gave my hand a weak, placating squeeze under the table, his eyes pleading with me not to make a scene. I just sat there, my smile frozen on my face, my hands clenched into fists in my lap, the rage a cold, hard knot in my stomach. Just as my father-in-law began a long-winded story about Mark's first lemonade stand, the doorbell rang, cutting through the smug atmosphere. Mark frowned. "We're not expecting anyone else." He rose and went to the door. A man stood in the entryway, looking flustered and holding a leather briefcase. I recognized him instantly. David Chen, the CFO of Mark's company. "David, what on earth are you doing here?" Mark asked, clearly annoyed by the interruption. But David barely glanced at him. His eyes scanned the room, wide with panic until they locked onto me. A look of pure shock, then something akin to reverence, crossed his face. He walked right past my stunned husband, past the questioning faces of my in-laws, and stopped directly beside my chair. He bowed his head slightly. "Ms. Anya," he stammered, his voice trembling. "I'm so sorry to intrude. I had no idea this was your family." "My deepest apologies. The quarterly reports are finalized and ready for your review. We're just waiting for your final sign-off, boss." The entire table fell silent. My husband's family stared, mouths agape, as they tried to process what they just heard. They had spent a decade treating me like a worthless freeloader, a simple housewife who contributed nothing, not realizing that their son's entire career, his promotion, his salary, his very job, was a gift from me. You're probably wondering why I, the secret owner of a multi-million-dollar corporation, would ever allow myself to be treated like dirt by my own family. To understand that, you have to understand the promise I made to my husband on our wedding day, a promise he broke and a debt I was finally ready to collect. Our story doesn't begin in that cold, silent dining room. It begins 15 years ago, in a quiet library on a college campus. I wasn't Anna the housewife then. I was Anya, a girl who had just inherited a tech empire from her late father. He was a brilliant, humble man who taught me that money was a tool, not an identity. But after he was gone, I learned that the world didn't see it that way. Potential friends saw a walking bank account, and suitors saw a shortcut to a life of luxury. I was deeply lonely, terrified that no one would ever see the real me beneath the layers of wealth. Then I met Mark. He was in the business school, full of ambition and a charming, restless energy. He was complaining to a friend at the next table about a professor, and I couldn't help but overhear and smile. We started talking, and for the first time, someone looked at me without a flicker of calculation in their eyes. He knew I was comfortable. I told him I had a small inheritance, but he had no idea of the scale. He talked about his own family, how his parents fawned over his sister Clara, while treating him like a perpetual disappointment. He just wanted a chance to prove himself, to build something of his own. I fell in love with that man, the one with fire in his eyes and a chip on his shoulder. Before we got married, I made a decision. I told Mark that I wanted to put my inheritance aside. I wanted him to be the man of the house, the provider. I told him I believed in him so much that I was happy to step back and support his journey. My greatest happiness, I said, would be watching him succeed. He was moved to tears. He promised he would spend his life making me proud, that we would be a team, and that he would never, ever take me for granted. That was the promise. But I did more than just step back. A year into our marriage, the small marketing firm where he worked was on the verge of bankruptcy. I saw my chance. Using a trust and a series of intermediaries, I bought the company anonymously. I created the persona of Anya, a mysterious hands-off investor from overseas. I hired a new CEO with a single private directive: give Mark Taylor every opportunity to shine, promote him when he's ready, give him the best accounts, and provide him with the resources to succeed. Make him believe he earned it all himself. For years, it worked. His confidence soared. He came home every day, energized and happy, kissing me and telling me I was his good luck charm. He was becoming the man I always knew he could be. And I, his quiet, supportive wife, was the secret architect of his entire world. For the first few years, our life was a dream. Mark was attentive, loving, and deeply appreciative. He called me his rock, his secret weapon. But success, especially unearned success, can be a poison. The more he was promoted, the more his family sang his praises, and the more he began to believe he was a self-made genius. The man I married slowly vanished, replaced by a stranger who wore his arrogance like a crown. My role as his rock was recast as his dependent. The private jokes we shared became public slights at my expense. Anna handles the important stuff. Like making sure my shirts are ironed, he'd say at parties, and everyone would laugh. He stopped asking for my opinion on anything serious, often patting my head and saying, "Don't worry your pretty little head about it, honey. I've got this." His sister Clara thrived in this new dynamic. She had always been condescending, but now she had an audience. She'd constantly compare her high-powered life as a marketing manager at some small boutique to my life of leisure. She'd tell stories about closing deals and managing clients, always ending with a pointed look at me. "Honestly, Anna, I don't know how you do it. I'd go crazy with all that free time." Mark never defended me. He'd just smile, basking in the reflected glory of his family's admiration. The mockery I could endure. I had built a thick skin over the years. The betrayal, however, was something different. As the anonymous owner, Anya, I received confidential quarterly reports from David Chen. 3 months ago, I noticed something odd: a series of large recurring payments to an outside vendor I didn't recognize, a lifestyle consultancy firm. The payments were being personally approved by Mark, categorized under marketing expenses. A little digging revealed the truth. The firm was a vanity project started by Clara. It was failing spectacularly. Mark wasn't just giving his sister a fake job on my company's payroll. He was actively embezzling money from me to fund her ridiculous fantasy of being an influencer. That was the moment the floor fell out from beneath me. He was lecturing me about using the company credit card he gave me for a new vacuum cleaner, while he was stealing tens of thousands of dollars to prop up the very person who treated me with the most contempt. The promise we made, the foundation of our entire life together, wasn't just broken, it had been ground into dust. The man I had sacrificed my identity for was using the power I gave him to betray me. I sat there in my home office, staring at the fraudulent invoices, and the love I had held for him for 15 years finally turned to ice. It was no longer about protecting his ego. It was about reclaiming my life. The next day, I called David Chen and told him I needed his help. I told him I'd be attending a family dinner, and I needed him to make an unscheduled visit. The discovery of Mark's theft didn't break me, it forged me. In the sterile silence of my office, surrounded by financial statements that laid his betrayal bare, the heartbroken wife named Anna died. In her place, Anya, the woman who had built an empire, finally took her seat at the head of the table. My grief cooled into a diamond-hard resolve. For 10 years I had played a part in a play of my own creation, and I had foolishly begun to believe the role was real. Now it was time for the final act, and I would be the one directing. My first call was to David Chen. He had been with the company since before my acquisition, and was one of the few people who knew my true identity. He was a man of impeccable integrity, and I knew he had been troubled by Mark's behavior. "David," I said, my voice calm and even, a stark contrast to the storm inside me. "I need your assistance with an internal matter regarding the vice president of sales." I didn't mention he was my husband. Professionally, he was just a corrupt employee. I laid out the facts of the embezzlement, the fake invoices, and the money trail leading directly to Clara. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Ms. Anya," he finally said, his voice tight with a satisfaction he was trying to hide. "I have had concerns about Mr. Taylor's expense reports for over a year. Thank you for trusting me with this. What do you need me to do?" I gave him his script. He was to arrive at my in-laws' house at 8 o'clock sharp, during the dinner celebrating Mark's promotion. He was to bring the quarterly reports. He was to address me only as Ms. Anya, or boss. He was to make it clear that I, and I alone, held the final authority. It was a simple plan, but its power was in its public nature. Their humiliation had to be as public as the respect they had denied me for a decade. In the days that followed, I moved with a chilling sense of purpose. I went about my duties as Anna the housewife, with meticulous care. I confirmed the dinner reservations, helped Eleanor choose the wine, and listened with a serene smile as Mark practiced the self-important speech he planned to give. He was like a child playing dress-up in his father's suit, completely oblivious that the world he thought he commanded was a sandcastle, and the tide was about to come in. While he was bragging to his friends on the phone, I was on secure calls with my legal team, drafting the documents that would strip him of his title, his company car, and his undeserved salary. I put a freeze on all payments to Clara's company, set to execute with a single email from my phone. He saw a dutiful wife. He had no idea he was looking at his executioner. The silence that followed David's departure was thick and suffocating. It was as if a bomb had gone off, and the sound had yet to reach us. My mother-in-law, Eleanor, was frozen, her wine glass held halfway to her lips. Richard's face was a mask of confusion, his fork hovering over a piece of steak. Clara stared at me, her perfectly painted mouth hanging open, a look of pure, unadulterated shock on her face. But my focus was on Mark. All the color had drained from his face, leaving him a ghastly shade of pale. He looked from the empty doorway back to me, his eyes wide with a mixture of terror and disbelief. Eleanor was the first to find her voice, though it was a thin, trembling whisper. "Mark! What was that all about? Who is Ms. Anya? Is this some kind of sick joke?" Mark flinched, turning on me with a desperate, accusatory glare. "Anna, what did you do?" he hissed, his voice cracking. "Did you hire that man? Are you trying to embarrass me? After everything I've done for you, for us, you pull a stunt like this?" I calmly placed my napkin on the table, the simple movement feeling monumental. I looked directly at my husband, the man whose entire world was resting on a foundation of my lies, and I felt nothing but a cold, clear sense of purpose. "There's no game, Mark," I said, my voice steady and low, cutting through his panic. "Anya is my name. It always has been. Anna was the nickname you gave me. It was the role I was happy to play because I loved you." I let that sink in for a moment before I continued, systematically dismantling the reality they all clung to. "The company you work for, Omnicorp? I own it. I bought it 13 years ago to save it from bankruptcy and to give you a chance to prove yourself." "You're lying!" Clara shrieked, jumping to her feet. "You're a pathetic, jealous housewife. You couldn't run a bake sale, let alone a corporation. My brother built that career with his own 2 hands. Did he? I asked, my gaze never leaving Mark's. That promotion you're celebrating tonight? I personally approved it 2 weeks ago. Every bonus you've ever received, every major account that fortuitously landed on your desk, every step up that ladder was a gift. It was all orchestrated by me. This is preposterous, Richard boomed, finding his voice. My son is the VP of sales because of his talent and hard work. I sighed, a small, tired sound. It was time to end this. I slowly pulled out my phone. You know, Clara, you were right about one thing. I am very good at domestic things. I've even been keeping a close eye on the family finances. I turned the screen toward Mark, displaying the spreadsheet I had prepared. It was a detailed list of every illegal transfer he had made. Like the $85,000 you funneled from my company into your sister's failing business this year alone. In legal terms, Mark, that's called embezzlement. I watched the last bit of defiance crumble from his face. Then, with a deliberate tap of my thumb, I sent the email I had waiting in my drafts. And now, I said, placing the phone face down on the table, your corporate accounts have been frozen. Your keycard is deactivated. Your company email has been suspended. You are no longer an employee, let alone a vice president. The silence that followed my announcement was heavier than before. It was the silence of total, absolute ruin. Mark sank back into his chair as if his bones had dissolved, his mouth opening and closing silently like a fish gasping for air. Clara, however, erupted. You witch! She screamed, her face contorted with rage. You conniving, evil witch! You've been planning this all along. She lunged toward me, but her father grabbed her arm, pulling her back. Eleanor, her face ashen, tried a different tactic. She clasped her hands together, a desperate, pleading look in her eyes. Anya, dear, she began, her voice dripping with a false sweetness that turned my stomach. You can't do this. We're family. Think of all the good years we've had. Mark loves you. He made a mistake. I finally looked away from Mark and met her gaze. My expression was placid, but my voice was like ice. The years where you called me his supportive little housewife? The years where you and your daughter took bets on whether I'd ever amount to anything? Those years, Eleanor? Yes, I am thinking of them, very clearly. That's when Mark finally spoke, his voice a broken whisper. Anya, please, don't do this. I'm sorry, I was stupid. It was them. They were always in my ear telling me I was the man, that you were holding me back. Holding you back? I let out a short, humorless laugh. Mark, I wasn't holding you back. I was holding you up. And I'm letting go. As if on cue, Clara's phone buzzed violently on the table. She snatched it up, her eyes scanning the screen. Payment declined? What do you mean payment declined? She muttered frantically, her fingers flying across the screen. Another buzz. Account frozen? No, no, no! The realization dawned on her, the rage in her eyes turning to pure animal panic. The money Mark had stolen for her was gone. Her entire fabricated life was evaporating in real time. I stood up, smoothing down my dress. The drama was over. I had said my piece and executed my judgment. My lawyers will be in touch regarding the terms of our divorce, I said to the room at large. They will also be sending you a schedule for the repayment of the $85,000. I suggest you don't ignore it. I walked out of that house without a backward glance, leaving them to drown in the mess they had made. The next morning, my security camera showed Clara on my doorstep, mascara running down her face, banging on the door and sobbing my name. I watched her on the monitor for a moment, then simply deleted the notification. I had expected them to lash out. People like the Taylors don't accept defeat gracefully. They believe they are the perpetual victims of an unjust world. A week after I walked out of their lives, I was served with a lawsuit. Mark was suing me for wrongful termination, emotional distress, and half of my assets, claiming our prenuptial agreement was invalid due to my fraudulent deception. Simultaneously, Clara launched her offensive. She posted a tearful black and white video to her social media accounts, telling a wild tale of a cruel, secretive woman who ensnared her brilliant brother, revealed a hidden fortune, and then callously threw him and his entire family into the street. For a day or two, she managed to gain some traction. A few hundred comments of sympathy appeared, calling me a monster. I watched all of this from the quiet of my office, feeling not anger, but a profound sense of pity. They were using slingshots against a fortress. I forwarded the lawsuit to my legal team and the video to my PR firm. Then I authorized the release of what I called my insurance policy. My lawyers didn't just respond to Mark's lawsuit, they annihilated it. At the preliminary hearing, they presented the opposition with a single, neatly bound file. It contained irrefutable proof of the embezzlement, copies of Clara's fraudulent invoices, and sworn affidavits from a dozen employees at Omnicorp detailing Mark's incompetence and Clara's non-existent consulting work. The final page was a draft of the criminal complaint we were prepared to file with the district attorney for conspiracy to commit fraud. My lawyer gave Mark's attorney a simple choice: drop the civil suit by the end of the day, or his client and his client's sister would be facing felony charges by morning. The lawsuit was withdrawn within the hour. Clara's digital smear campaign met an even more brutal end. While she was busy playing the victim online, an anonymous source, me, sent a thick file to an investigative journalist known for exposing online scams. The file contained proof that Clara's luxury lifestyle brand was a sham built on cheap, dangerous knockoffs from overseas, complete with falsified safety certificates and an army of fake reviews. The story broke 2 days later. The public backlash was immediate and vicious. Clara wasn't just a liar. She was a predator who had endangered her customers. Her social media was flooded with hate, her business was reported, and she was hit with a class action lawsuit from the people she had scammed. Her online empire crumbled to dust in less than a week. The final blow was the quietest. Stripped of his job, his reputation, and his delusions of grandeur, Mark was forced to move back into his parents' house, into his childhood bedroom. The brilliant vice president, the man of the house, was now a 40-year-old disgrace, completely dependent on the very parents whose expectations he could never meet. They had nothing left: no money, no status, no future. They were trapped together in the monument to their own failure. It's been a year since that dinner. The name Anna now feels like a costume I wore for a role I was never meant to play. Today, everyone knows me as Anya. I didn't remain a shadowy figurehead at Omnicorp. I stepped out from behind the curtain and took my rightful place as CEO. The first few months were a whirlwind of restructuring and cleaning up the quiet messes Mark's ego had created. I found inefficiencies he'd ignored, and opportunities he'd been too arrogant to see. With David Chen as my trusted COO, we transformed the company. Profits are up 40%, and we've launched 2 new divisions that are changing the industry. The respect I get from my board and my employees isn't a gift. It's earned every single day through hard work and clear vision. Sometimes, I think about the promise I made to Mark. I was so young, so determined to be loved for who I was, not what I had. I thought that by diminishing myself, I could elevate him, and in his success, we would find a shared happiness. I see now that my greatest mistake wasn't in wanting to support him, but in believing my support required my own erasure. You cannot build a healthy partnership on a foundation of self-sacrifice. The moment I hid my own strength, I doomed us both. He became a man propped up by a lie, and I became a ghost in my own life. I never hear from the Taylors directly. My lawyers handled the finalization of the divorce and the settlement of the embezzled funds, which they are repaying in small, humiliating monthly installments. I heard through a former acquaintance that they had to sell their large family home to cover their debts and Clara's mounting legal fees. Mark, unemployable in the corporate world, now manages a small appliance store in a different town. They tried to destroy me with whispers and mockery, but in the end, their own actions consumed them, leaving them with nothing. They are a footnote in a chapter of my life that is now closed. From my office window, I can see the entire city sprawling out below. It looks full of light and possibility. I am no longer hiding in the shadows, propping up someone else's dream. I am standing in the sun, building my own. The silence in my life now isn't the heavy, oppressive silence of things left unsaid. It's the clean, quiet peace of a woman who is finally, completely, and unapologetically herself.